All right. So welcome everybody. We're doing one of the more important, I mean, if you can say such a thing, one of the more important simanim, in my view, at least. So we're in Siman Sadi Bet. Turn to the Tur. We're gonna go straight to the Tur. I have all the Gemaras and the Tosafos that we saw in the back of your mind, and basically the Beit Yosef brings them, but I'm not going to read the Beit Yosef where he brings them because we already have them in our mind. I hope. Um, maybe I'll start off reading and then we'll go forward. כזית בשר שנפל לתוך יורה של חלב רותחת ויש בחלב 60 כנגד הבשר. So it fell in and there's 60. Sounds good. Sounds okay. אם קידם וסילק הבשר קודם שתנוח היורה מרתיחתה, הבשר אסור והחלב מותר. If you quickly, or not quickly, but if you remove the meat before tanuach hayora mitichata, before the yora stopped its boiling, or tanuach hayora mitichata, basar asur v'chalav mutar. אבל אם אין בחלב 60 levatel habasar. Oh, if there's not 60. And then in parentheses, you can almost say, oh, afilu yesh bo shishim, velo kidem v'silko, kodem shetanuach hayora meritichata. Gam hachalav asur. Then the milk is also asur. L'Rashi. Why? The min b'min over mashu. Because he holds min b'min over mashu. All right, so can somebody explain to me, according to Tosfot, what does it mean that the Yoreh that you should take it out before the Yoreh stopped, it rested from its boiling? What do you think? I mean, I understand that in the light of Tosfot. Joel, go. Oh, Joel,
Let's let Ori do it if he wants
all
to.
right, Ori, go for it.
I think Tosfot added that means when it finished absorbing, like once it, I think he added that, right? So it's not just a question of like the boil stopping, but that there's a concept that it continues to absorb and it doesn't exude flavor until it's completely done absorbing and then it starts exuding flavor. So that period of time, if it goes that long,
Then it'll
um,
start exuding its own flavor.
right. But if you get it
Yeah,
before then, it won't start exuding.
yeah. It's like a person who comes to the yeshiva after having never learned any Torah. He comes in and he oozes out ideas. The rabbi says something. He says, "Well, wait a second, Rabbi. What about this? And what about that?" He's giving forth his own time, his own explanations. But he never learned anything before. So that he gives out is from himself. But after a while, he's been learning yeshiva for a year, two, three. He's fully absorbed the Torah of his surroundings, but then he can start giving forth Torah that is, how do you say, mati, that is of the same min, that is of the same type as that which he absorbed. In other words, now what he says will be more similar to Torah that he learned. It'll be in the same way of thinking as Torah.
But in your metaphor, you're saying the issue is that the flavor going out is basar v'chalav flavor as opposed to whatever is before that.
In other words,
Itam
in the beginning,
atzmo.
this is what Tosa says. In the beginning, when the meat gives off flavor, it's flavor of meat. It's meat flavor. Its own flavor it's giving off. But later, once it's fully absorbed all of the milk, now it gives back milk. Now it can actually give back milk.
And
And
that's the bigger problem.
that's why the Torah says it's min b'mino, and Rashi holds like Rabbi Yehuda that min b'mino he paskins like Rabbi Yehuda that min b'mino is not batal mashu. In other words, the problem if you don't take it out before it finished absorbing Now it finished absorbing. Now what it gives out is going to be the milk that it, in other words, in the beginning, because Tosus is bothered. Tosus says, who says that meat doesn't give flavor to water in the beginning? For sure does, but it gives it its own flavor. That's what Tosus' answer is. It only starts giving out the flavor that it absorbed once it's fully infused with the milk, and then it sort of bubbles over, and then it becomes min b'mino coming out, milk coming out. Of course, that milk is usser milk. So it's usser milk and kosher milk, and it becomes min b'mino, and that's why he says, for Rashi only, this is an issue. There were
Isn't
some
that Rabbeinu
comments.
Tam that you're using when you say that? I didn't see Tosfos say that you're giving out the flavor it absorbed. That's Rabbeinu Tam in the end there, right? Hacha mivla bala
Joel,
mikvat lo palit.
But it's implied in the Tricarev. They say it directly in the Tosfot, but it's implied in the Tur here that that's what's going on. I think he may say it later too, right?
but
That because
it is said in the
it's the
Tosfos.
milk. Yeah, it's the milk that's the meaty milk that's being given out at this point. So
Tosfos says in one of the Tosfos that I gave you to look at. Tosfos definitely says that. That's it. He says he actually asks a kasha on like mitziyut. He says we see that. How can you say that it doesn't give off flavor? We see all the time that you boil a piece of meat and fat comes into the water, or you
that's
boil
the
vegetables and vegetable color. You boil carrots and the water becomes orange. So he didn't exactly say that, but that's what he says. If you boil vegetables, the water becomes colored. So he answers. The Gemara doesn't mean to deny that. It can't deny the reality. It means to deny that anything that went into the carrot will come out in the early stages. There's two stages of cooking. And the secondary stage, it'll exude flavor that it absorbed. That's after the yeshiva bacher learned a lot of Torah, now he'll exude Torah, not just his own random ideas from the culture in which he came. No offense to the new initiates, but it's their own culture is good.
I never met such a student like that.
What?
I never had the pleasure of meeting a student like that.
Well, go to our
It might
Sameach.
might be because of my physical reaction when that begins. So it ends pretty quickly. It could be.
I've seen it. I've seen it. Because you don't know what's right
Not
from left.
tonight. Not tonight.
All right, we'll talk about another time.
No,
Okay, so
I mean, not tonight. We're not going to hear it tonight.
oh, we're not going to hear it tonight. You guys are all lamdanim, b'nei lamdanim. What? Wait. So what? Any question? Wait. Does any? I saw there were some comments in the chat, but I didn't notice them. Is there anything that anybody wants to add? Okay, so I think that's the explanation, and that's for Rashi. Let's go on a little bit. Aval Rabbeinu Tam, Demin b'mino b'shishim, that he holds that whether it's min b'mino or min b'she'eno mino, doesn't matter. We always require 60. Afilu lo kidem v'silek. We don't really care about this kidem and v'silek. We don't care if he took it out early. Kevan sheyesh bar shishim mutar, because even if the milk would come out from the meat, the usser milk that went into the meat and then came out again, even if it does come out again, it's still going to be batal and shishim. So he kind of puts that whole Gemara discussion in the realm of non-halachic, because we're going to paskin in the end like Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbi Joel.
yeah, I mean we're not gonna get in the Tur, but we're gonna get it in the Shulchan Aruch or in the Ramah, right? Who doesn't hold Timat Goy is helpful either, right? That because then there would be a difference in this case.
Yes. So actually, that's a question I wanted to ask. It says here that the Torah says Gama Chalav Asur. Why doesn't he say that there's a Timat Goy? In other words, he says Aval im. I'll just read it again. Aval, and I'll skip the parentheses. What I see as a parentheses. Aval im ein. I'm reading the Torah. Aval im ein b'chalav shishim levatel basur. Gama chalav asur. What pitom the chalav is asur? Maybe the chalav should be mutar, because Again, im ein b'shishim, let a goy taste it. Why does he say if ein shishim, it's a sur? Maybe a goy could taste it. Because we're talking about a case where he did kidem, where he did take it out. He did take it out early, so none of the milk went in. None of the milk went in. It's only the meat. Only the meat there, because he was kidem, he took it out early. So why does he say if there's no 60, it's usser? He should say timat goy. That's my. I don't think. Actually, the basis of kind of asked this question, but he doesn't really. Anybody hear me? Anybody understand? Anyone want to rephrase my question? You understand my question? Anybody have an answer? Why does he say? Why does he say timat goy? What? I know what you're going to say, Rabbi Landis. I think I know what you're going to say. Go ahead. But you're on mute.
Tell me, you do it better than me. Come on.
Oh, what you're going to say is that the idea of timat goy has fallen away from the halacha. We don't like that.
Close. What I was going to say is timat goy. It's usher. It's usher. However, he has room for timat goy. In other words, not here in this. That in general, timat goy is a birur that allows us to declare kosher something that seems to have a chazaka might not be the right word, but a status of being not kosher. So therefore, here when he says it, he's talking about in and of itself, it's really not kosher. If we had a timas goy, maybe he would say.
No, you say he doesn't mean to exclude that possibility. He means to say it's generally usher, but of course, if you had a goy, it would be fine. I disagree.
Yeah,
I
you
disagree.
said it. I was striving for a more lumdischer way of saying it, but we agree. That I mean, your interpretation of me is good enough.
Right. Okay, but I don't agree with that though. I think there's something else going on here.
Okay.
Rabbi Joel, what do you have?
Well, I'm just going to do a diuk on the Tur a little bit because the first time he says, right, yesh b'chalav shishim keneged habasar. Here he says b'chalav shishim levatel habasar. So that's I think shishim levatel habasar means there is enough milk to nullify the flavor, and not that it's a ratio anymore. He's talking about the power of it.
That's
not
also
the ratio.
kind of like Rabbi Landis. You're saying
it is, yeah.
Okay, but there's a simpler explanation, and it requires good memory of all the things that we learned before. There's a very simple explanation. We learned, let's say, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. Shitat Rashi. We're in Shitat Rashi. What's Shitat Rashi? Noam, what's Shitat Rashi?
That you need both Teimat Goy and Shishim. No?
Right. He's only explaining here. It's a trick question what I asked you, kind of, but he's only explaining here according to Rashi. And Rashi has his Shita, which is Shitat Rashi, which is not only does he hold like Rabbi Yehuda that it's been Bamino, he also holds you need 60, come what may. So that's why, and he was talking to kids, but it's not 60. It's not 60, so it's not kosher. There's no timat goy. It's not going to help you if you're not 60. And it's also not going to help you if there is 60, because the goy can't taste min b'mino. But if it was not kidem, but in kidem it's not min b'mino, right? If he didn't take it out early, then he took it, he let it sit there, then it's min b'mino, and the timat goy won't work. But if you took it out early and there's 60, then it'll be mutter, and you don't even need timat goy really. Okay, the truth is right. Okay, so that's anyway. We just now saw that's Sif Aleph, Sif Bet. Josie, maybe you want to read Sif Bet? But you're muted.
And I read so beautifully. Tipat chalav shenafla ohatecha basar shebekdera im yesh ba shishim levatel chalav muteret v'im lav asura v'ein ashar shebekdera mitztaref imach levatel chalav. All right, so a drop of milk falls onto a piece of meat in a pot. If there is 60 of the meat against to nullify the milk, the meat is permitted. The haticha is permitted, and if not, it's forbidden. And the rest of the meat in the pot is we do not mix or combine the rest of the meat in the pot with the haticha to nullify this droplet of milk.
And what's the stat? Right. So in other words, I call it like a local interaction. It's a local interaction. The meat drops on the milk drops on the piece of meat, and it interacts locally with that piece of meat, and the other pieces of meat are not involved in the calculation. And if there isn't 60, it's asura, that piece. And you can't use the other pieces. Now, that's the basic law. And now we're going to see a division here between the Ri and Rashi. So read it.
Upirash ri dafka shekol haticha chutz lerotav kigon shehaticha shetakteha katzta chutz lerotav v'zo monachat alei techula chutz lerotav. So the Ri paskins that it's specifically that it's the piece of the meat that's outside of the rotav, the sauce, or the gravy or the juice. Like the pieces of meat that are below, I'm sorry, as opposed to the pieces of meat that are below, and this one is sitting upon it.
Read it again in Hebrew to yourself. You're getting a little confused here in the translation.
Shekol haticha chutz lerotav kagon shehaticha shetachteha katzta.
No, ktsata. You have to read it ktsata.
Ktsata. So the piece of meat that is outside of the rotav, and another piece is sitting on top of it.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, there's two pieces. One piece is like a whale that's come up to breathe. It's partially in the water, and part of the back of the whale is above the water. And then there's another piece on top of the back of the whale. There's on top of the piece is another piece, and that piece is completely high and dry. And that high and dry piece is the one that the milk fell on.
So
that's what we understand.
So you've got two pieces of meat.
What is it? Rabbi Hanina, everyone knows the midrash of Rabbi Barhuna, Hanina I forget anyway. Forget exactly his name. Famous story of like the whale that they went on to in the sea, and then they lit a fire.
Rabbi Barchana.
Rabbi Barchana, thank you. Rabbi Barchana, thank you. It's like that. So they're on top. This piece is on top of the whale, on top of the other piece, and therefore it's high and dry. And on that piece fell the rotav, fell the milk. That's what it says. So read it. Dafka shekol haticha chutz lerotav kagon shehaticha shetachteha, the one under it, kitzata chutz lerotav. Part of it is outside of the water. V'zo, and this one that we're talking about, munachet aleha, the kula chutz lerotav, and it's entirely out of the sauce. Aval, so pick up from there.
Niktata berotav hariticha me'overet hatam b'chol hakadira v'hakol misterech levatel chalav. But if it's dropping it on a piece
partially
of meat
in the water, if it's like a whale that's breathing air, and it falls on the back of the whale, it's as though the drop goes everywhere. All the pieces, once it hits a piece that's submerged even partially in the rotev, then all the rotev and all the other pieces that are in the rotev join up, and you only need 60 against it. So he's actually a kind of a kula. The Tosas is bringing a kula in a sense. We'll see, it could be a kula and a kula, but in most cases it'll be a kula, because he's saying in most cases all the pieces are, in some amount of rotev, probably. And that means if you don't have this, the whole din doesn't get started. It's only in a special case where you don't have very much rotev, and you just have pieces on top of pieces. Because, what's the logic? Because without rotev, once it's rotev, it spreads evenly. Once it's rotev, the rotev acts as a conduit to cause all the drop to go everywhere. But when there's no rotev and it's dry, it stays locally. Okay, now read Rashi. That's all Tosafos' opinion. Now Rashi's opinion.
Rashi Pirash, afilu miktsata berotav, ein hakol mitztaref levatel halav, v'chein katav bal ha'itur, v'davka k'shulo ni'er kedera miyad k'neshafal halav. So, and Rashi explains instead that even if there's a little bit under the sea, they don't all mix together. We don't mix everything together to nullify the milk. And also, this is what the Bala Itor writes. And specifically,
right. Now, did anybody look at the Rashi where he says this? Did anybody find the Rashi where he says this? Is there a Rashi where he says this? So there is a Rashi that sort of says, that seems to say this, although you could read it to be in agreement with Tosfos. Rashi and Tosfos himself, when he mentions his opinion, never says Rashi says like this, but I say like that. He just explains the case, and it's there, and it's not a universally agreed even by the Rishonim that are brought by the Beit Yosef that really Rashi says this, but he does bring a proof that Rashi did. He does a kind of brings a convoluted proof that this is what Rashi means. Not convoluted, but he brings a proof from an unlikely source, from a different place. Yeah. Not unlikely, but anyway, it's not 100% clear from the main Rashi of the Sugya that he actually holds and that the Tosfos disagrees with him. It could be that everybody agrees with Tosfos. It could be that Rashi agrees with Tosfos. But let's say, but I'm just pointing out that if you look after class, you'll see that it's not 100% clear that Rashi says this. But okay, but let's say, but Rashi is understood to say this, and that's the way most people understand Rashi. So we have this Rashi, Tosfos Machloket, whether locality can persist even when the piece is in the water, in the rotev. And that's kind of a weird, I mean, is there any rationale for that? Why would it not mix? I mean, the simplest answer is just because that's what the Gemara says. But that's not a rationale. Joel, you have an idea?
Let's go with someone else first. Yeah.
So, I mean, just reading it from the start, like if I have still water and I drop a drop of milk on some meat, it may spread through the meat, but it isn't necessarily going to spread beyond the boundaries of the meat if it's sitting above the water, which is why the next statement, but it's only if you're not actually actively stirring the pot up, right? If you just have
no, he says read miyad. In other words, if you would do it later, then the piece would already, then what? Wait, we're in the world of Rashi. Are we in the world of Rashi or Tosfos? Or both?
This isn't Rashi, it looks like.
This is both. I think it's both. Or maybe not. Maybe it's Rashi. Rashi says it stays locally. V'davka kishaloni dera kedera miyad kishenafal halav. V'gam lo kisa ota miyad. Avalim miyad kishenafal halav ala chaticha v'niyera kedera o kisa ota hakol mitzaref levatel halav. I mean, Tosfos would agree to that too. If I suppose, or maybe not. Maybe it's only in Rashi. Maybe like you're saying, Josie, maybe Rashi, it's only in Rashi, and he's saying that as long as it's still, like you said, it's still waters, and then it stays local. But the minute you start stirring it, it'll spread everywhere. And if you do it right away, then it'll never get a chance. It's kind of a weird idea. It'll never get a chance to make the piece become Hanan. What? I mean, which is not intuitive. I'd say
stirring is to mix something together.
So you're specifically spreading that droplet out.
You stir in order to do that process of mixing together. And so if you don't stir, then you decide what you're going to do with the thing that's there. Say, that's where it is. It's being combo. But mixing means it mixes up. That's why you mix it up. And
yeah,
why
what's
do you
the
mix
difference?
It up so strongly? Because this is what people do, you know.
What's the difference between mixing it immediately and mixing it a little bit later?
Because always had its status then defined.
So now
I'm sorry for sounding lumdish, okay?
Yeah.
But it's defined. The other way of doing it, I think. It's defined by its status at that moment, and that's it.
So, so if I'm looking at it temporally, the milk falls on the meat, and if the meat just sits there, now I've got a piece of hanan in my pot, and now I've got I'm in the case where in this state with hanan in my pot, as opposed to it falls in, but I'm busy stirring the pot, and the milk never gets to find that one piece of meat and turn that into a hanan because the milk is being spread actively through all the pieces of meat. And if there's not, and so therefore you can conceivably try to nullify against all the meat.
I have a question. If it fell on the piece and you didn't stir it, and the piece is usser, the other pieces are mutter, right? Because it stays locally, according to Rashi. The other pieces are mutter. According to Tosfos, it would be usser. I mean, if the piece if the piece was in the water, it would be all mutter because there would be 60, presumably.
We had Jacob. I interrupted Jacob.
Jacob, you want to say something?
I mean, I was thinking about it. It's somewhat about the mechanics to some extent of like how much the heat has an impact, how much the liquid has an impact if it's only half in the liquid. Maybe that's a way of looking at it. If it's falling on a piece of meat.
Well, which you're talking according to Rashi, where it's partially submerged?
Yeah, maybe we look at it that it's the heat and the liquid only have so much impact on the top of that piece of meat, where it might be like a bit drier.
I hear what you're saying. It's like the top part is not 100% being cooked because it's like out a little bit out, and therefore it stays locally.
Yeah.
But here's my question. If you, it could be you're right. Here's my question. If it falls on a drop, so if it falls on a piece that's partially submerged, according to Rashi, only the piece will become aser. And you didn't stir it miyad, but you did stir it not miyad. What would the din be then? When would it be mutter and when would it be aser?
I mean, I guess it would depend on the ratio within the pot.
Between what two things?
The piece at that point, because we're saying it's absorbed with the whole piece, so the ratio between that whole piece rather than just a drop and everything in the pot.
Right. But if you did it miyad, then what would the ratio be between what two things?
The drop and all the contents of the pot.
There's a little bit still right. In other words, once it hits the piece becomes aser. And but if you did it really quick, we don't know how miyad is, how quickly that is. But if you did it at the same moment as you saw it, let's say you saw it fall, you immediately stirred it, then Hanan would not occur. I still think it's a bit strange. But yeah, somehow time is a factor. Now let's see what the Rambam says, because the Rambam says a similar thing, but we'll notice the difference. So continue, Josie. Kasav Rambam.
כתב הרמב"ם, אבל אם נר מתחילה ועד סוף, או שכיסה משעת נפילה ועד סוף, הרי זה בנותן טעם. So the Rambam paskins that if you were stirring it the whole time, or if you covered it at the time of
well, he means after the drop fell, and then you stirred it, and it's a little bit the Mahari ibn Chaviv discusses why he talks about ad sof, but essentially it just means if you stir it at the beginning,
so if you're stirring,
not just at the end,
right? If you're stirring it while the droplet is falling,
not while. No, it doesn't say while. But
what is then mitchila?
Maybe we'll look up. You know what? Let's look up the Rambam. Look up the Rambam. Perak Tet Halacha Yud. Let me just a second. Perek Tet Halacha Yud in Hilchot Ma'achalot Asurot in Kedusha.
Perek Tet Halacha Yud. It says, "Bama Devar Mamarim B'Shelo Niyer Et Kedera B'Tchila
Right,
Kishnaf
so read
Halacha."
the halacha before that.
Okay, so Tet Nafal Chalav L'Toch Kedera Shel Basar Ta'amin Et Haticha Shenafal Ale Chalav Im Ein Ba Ta'am Chalav Hakol Mutar V'Im Yesh B'Haticha Ta'am Chalav Av Al Pi She'im Tischat Haticha Lo Yishar Ba Ta'am Ho'il Yesh Ba Ata Ta'am Chalav Ne'asra Tahticha.
Okay, so that's our case, and he says basically if it fell on it, you have to taste it, which means you need 60. We would say you need 60. Umisharin bekula. We'll keep going.
Umisharin bekula. Im hayavachol sheyesh bekedera mina hadichot vehayarak vehamarak vehatavlim kedei shetihiyeh haticha zo echad mishishim min hakol. Haticha asura vehashar mutar. So, and if you have it again, if you have in the pot against all of the pieces and the vegetables and the sauce and the spices, you have basically it's 60 against this one piece of meat.
As the piece now became usher. So now you're gonna have 60 against the whole piece.
Right. So yeah, so now you've got a piece of hanan in your pot, and you have to be 60 against that.
Exactly. But the piece will always be usher, but the food could be mutter if you have 60 against the piece. Go now, read Yud.
Okay.
Oh, so he's saying this was talking where you didn't stir it at the beginning. And he doesn't say while the drop is falling in, just at the beginning. This is only talking if you stirred it at the end, but not at the beginning. Velo kisa, same thing also. You didn't cover it at the beginning, but only at the end. Aval im nier b'tchila v'adsof. Oh, shekisa mishas nefila ad sof. Then you don't have the whole problem of Hanan because you stirred it from the beginning. V'ken im nafal chalav l'toch marak or l'toch hatichot. If it fell into the broth or into many hatichot. V'lo nodale is a hatichot nafal. You don't know which. Noer et hakedera kulo ad yitarev hakol. Ve'im yesh bekedera kulo tam chalav asura ve'im lav muteret. So it's very similar to what we just said. What the Tur said. There's only one slight difference. But he doesn't say you have to be stirring while it happens. But he says betchila. But also, there's one word that's missing. What word is missing that we found in the Tur? And the Rambam does not mention one word. Very important word. Look at the Tur again. In other words, before we brought the Rambam, in the Tur, it said, Vidavka kishalon yer hakadera miyad kishnafal halav. Does the Rambam say that? He does not say miyad. He says techila has to be in the beginning. The beginning is the beginning, not miyad, not immediately. Maybe you think I'm being too medayek, Rabbi Landis? Yes. He said this is the beginning and the end.
Even for me. Even for
you. I see it a little bit, but I see he says the beginning and not the end. But
the Tur quotes the Rambam mitchila, and we see the Rambam saying batchila. So he almost,
Okay. That
I'm
that
just
I
saying he
wouldn't
almost splits the
differentiate.
difference there to make it a little closer to miyad.
Uh-huh. Oh, because he says what?
That's because that's his view. He says
Mitchila.
mitchila, almost like miyad, but it's, from the
But
beginning. It
also
makes it sound
notice,
like the very beginning.
the second case in the Rambam. In the second case, he says, came im nafal l'torah marak. Or in the piece you don't know, he says, no air et hakadera.
You're supposed
He's
to.
telling you advice. Go and stir it. That's not going to be miyad. It's going to take moments for you to say, oh, this happened. I better do it. In other words, I'm just saying, it sounds maybe.
So how is this not aim mevatlim?
Oh, how is this aim of atlin latchila? Yeah, that's a great question.
Lamata
So
Yosef.
yeah.
Well, I was
Ari,
going
what
to
do you
say
say?
the real problem here is there's no shiur of time mentioned. So you can say what's miyad, what's mitchila, but we don't really know because the point is there's
Yeah,
some
there's no
simple
numbers mentioned.
reality.
We have no
Yeah.
numbers. Yes, you're right. All right, let's finish I'm just pointing out that the language is a little bit different. Miyad. The Ram does not say miyad. He says betchila. But by the way, the techila of the here, maybe just Rabbi Landis. Listen to me. One more point. One more argument in my favor. The lashon of techila v'ad sof is not the Rambam. It's the Gemara. The Gemara says you have to do it mit techila. So the Rambam is just quoting the Gemara. So you can't learn out from that he's telling you do it quickly. He's just quoted the Gemara. You do it at techila. Now you have to say, what does the Gemara mean? Maybe the Gemara means miyad, but it's certainly not the Rambam's chiddush. He's just quoting the Gemara. Rabbi Joel.
I hear you.
I just want to,
Yeah.
I just want to say in at least the version of the printed Gemara that we have, at one point it says Batrila, at one point it says Mitchila. It never says Miyad, I don't think, but it has both versions, with the Mitchila and Batrila in there. So,
Uh-huh.
I don't know
I
what to do
think
with
you're
that.
right. I'm sorry. I thought about over it right now. I think you're right. It occurs to me it's a fine tuning, but significant fine tuning.
Yeah,
I agree.
I'm not making
I agree.
a big
I agree with you. I agree.
Okay, thank you.
But they both say kish and afal, which
Who
it's
says
still pretty.
kishinafal?
They both do. The Rambam says batchila kish and afal hechalav. So how long do you think he means you're waiting?
Ah,
Kish and afal.
okay. You're right. Oh, maybe you're right.
I'm
Again, might be the Gemara.
No, I don't know. Okay. Anyway, just be aware of that. Just be aware of that. We don't have to make a big deal out of it. It's just a small point. Everybody understands the Rambam is also meaning miyad. So basically, the Katav Rambam. So we said the Tur said miyad, and the Katav Rambam, he said you have to do it miyad. He said you have to do it from the beginning and to the end. And if you just do it at the end, then it makes matters worse because now you have to have 60 against the whole thing.
I'm
Presumably,
Jacob's advocate. He's got something.
Oh, Jacob.
I mean, especially thinking with the issue of like possibly being vatel l'chatchila, I think actually the way Josie originally translated it and explained it with you're already stirring at the beginning. Maybe that's the way to understand it. That you were already stirring at the beginning, so it is immediately mixed in because you were already in the middle of that action. And then but if you started the stirring after it's fallen on the meat, that's when the end is. It works with the kishenafal.
I understand what you're saying, but the problem is the second case of the Rambam. He says noer et hakadera. He's telling you you weren't stirring it, and now he's telling you noer et hakadera. Go and do it. So you see that there is this idea of doing it after it happened, not while it happened. He's telling you, he's prescribing for you, go and stir it now. So you weren't stirring it. Okay, so he quotes the Rambam presumably to support the Tur quotes the Rambam presumably to support what he just said. Because I don't see much difference except for that miyad, but even that's not much of a difference. But I feel
but that now the Torah is going to go on and sort of
engage
this even more. Take away the miyad even more.
Where are you reading? I'm sorry, I lost the place.
I'm back in the Torah.
Venera. Okay, Venera. Go ahead. Again from there.
נראה שאין צריך רק שינער או יכסה מיד בשעה נפילה, ואפילו פסק אחר כך מלנער מיד, מתערב הטעם בכל מה שגדרה, מצטרף כולו לבטל.
In other words, he's basically saying the end when it says ad sof, it's lav dafka, and the Beit Yosef brings the Mahari ibn Chaviv, who says who says the same point, who says he's just nimshach achar lashon ashas. In other words, in the Talmud it talks about mitchila ad sof, and so he talks about mitchila ad sof, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do it. He just says if you just did it at the end, it's not good. So therefore, you have to do the techila and the end, but it really just means do it at the techila. The techila is enough. That's his only point here. Katav od, go on.
וכתב עוד הרמב"ם, נפל חלב לתוך המרק, או לכל התיכות ולא נודע לאיזו התיכה נפל, נוער את הגדרה כולה, עד שיתערב הכל, אם יש בגדרה כולה טעם חלב אסורה ואם לאו מותרת. Which is back to just the Rambam.
That's the Rambam. And now go on.
ואיני מבין דבריו, שאם התיכות כולם בתוך הרוטב, מה צריך לנער? ואם אינן ברוטב, מה מועיל נאור? שמנער אחר כך. So the Torah kind of throws up his hands here and says, I don't understand what he's getting to here. He says, I don't understand this. Because if the pieces are all in the juice, why do you have to stir it up? And if they're not in the juice, what effect does stirring it have?
So is he thinking like Tosfos or like Rashi? Remember we saw the machloket between Tosfos and Rashi. How's the Torah thinking? In what way is he thinking?
I think like both. If I'm understanding Rashi and Tosfos correctly, they both would agree in a case where it's fully in the rotev that you count everything towards the heter, right?
That's true. No. Yeah. True.
Yeah, meaning their disagreement, the nafkamina is just in a question where it's partially in, where Rashi is machmir and Tosfos is mekil. Is that right?
Well, when we say kulan b'tocha rotev, what does that mean? They're all in the broth fully or partially?
Fair enough, but either way, he's agreeing with both Rashi and Tosfos and disagree like that the rotev is an important mitigating factor.
No, but Rashi would say if they're all in the rotev and you don't stir it and it falls on all of them, then just take out all of them and whatever didn't fall, well, you don't know which ones it fell on. But they're all going to be like they're individually aser. You need to stir it in order to have it mixed. But a Tosfos would say you don't need to stir it at all. I think he's kind of asking as v'im einan barotev, if they're high and dry, ma mo'il. In other words, if it's like Tosfos described that they're high and dry, ma mo'il, niur. And if they're fully submerged, then you don't need to do it. Okay, is that what you want to say? But what if they're partially submerged?
I don't understand why it wouldn't be effective if it was high and dry.
Because it's too late. They became Hanan.
They became Hanan immediately?
Yeah. Right. Oh, you're saying what about cooking? Well, what was the Rambam talking about? The Rambam didn't specify. He just said it fell on a chaticha that's b'toch harotev. How does the Rambam agree with Tosfos or does the Rambam agree with Rashi? Which makes more sense? But when the Rambam says that, he just says it like the Gemara says it. It fell. The Gemara just said it fell on the rotev. It fell on the pieces. I think he's like Rashi. Why do I think the Rambam is like Rashi? Because if he would be thinking that the Gemara is talking about the Tosfos situation, then stirring it wouldn't help. In Tosfos' situation, stirring doesn't help. It fell on the pieces that are high and dry. The stirring is not going to help. So the Rambam's learning, no, the pieces are partially in the water.
But I thought that the point that we read in the I see that it goes both ways. But the first side of the point is actually lakula, because if it is halfway in, then it's already fully mixed with the whole pot, correct?
Right, but the Gemara, what was the case of the Gemara? The case of the Gemara was that it comes usher. So they disagree totally on how to read the Gemara. When the Gemara says the piece is usher in isolation, Tosfos says that can only be if it's high and dry. Now the Rambam just quotes the lashon of the Gemara. But how does he understand the case? Does he understand the case of high and dry, or does he understand the case that it's in the water? And I propose that he's saying it's in the water, because otherwise the story is not going to help. So I think the Rambam is learning like Rashi.
And when the Tur asks this question is because he's thinking more.
So we're in the world of Rashi. So we're in the world of Rashi, really, and he's saying, I don't understand, even in Rashi, maybe. Let's say the Tur agrees with me. And he's saying, if the Rambam is talking about a different case from the Gemara, and he's talking about whether they're high and dry, then it's not going to help. But if he's talking about the case of the Gemara, that they're partially submerged, then why do you need it? But you do. But then it's no question. Then it's no question. So I'm defending the Rambam. The Tur's question is a misunderstanding a little bit, and Beit Yosef talks about this. Rabbi Joel.
No, I mean, on the other hand, the Re has to agree that there is, because the Gemara says it. There's a case of, and the Tur kind of plays. There's a case of stirring that does work, right? If it falls on and you miyad stir it, it makes it, even if it's completely chutz l'rotev, it has to then mix with all the pieces, not just the piece that it falls on. This might be the difference between, right? That's the language of the, right? The Torah itself says, "V'zdaf kishaloni erakdera miyad kishnafal chalav v'gam lo chisa ota miyad aval im miyad kishnafal chalav al chaticha erakdera chisa oto akol misteref levatel chalav." Right. So he agrees with that if you stirred it immediately, I think this is kind of if you didn't know where it fell and you stirred.
You're saying that Tosfos agrees that if it was hot, if it was totally away from all the broth and you stirred it immediately, it would still mistaref.
I think you have to say that, right? It's
so then the Tur, then even better akasha on the Tur. Then why does he say why mo'il? I'll tell you why it's mo'il, because the Gemara says it's mo'il.
Exactly. Yeah. So
why is he asking akasha on the Rambam? Let him ask akasha on Tosfos and in the Gemara.
Well, because the Rambam's language is also weird. Though. He says nafal chalav v'tocha marak, right? Then it's like, well, that's kind of strange. It falls in the rock. Didn't we just say that automatically that it's already mixed with everything? Why do you have to stir it at that point?
Right.
I think that's really what his question comes down to.
That's also a question.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's also a question. No.
Well, I just wanted to ask a question for clarification. Maybe I'm not understanding. Rashi, if I'm understanding Rashi correctly, he says if it's wholly submerged, you don't need to stir it. Like I thought the diuk about stirring that immediately follows the Rashi is qualifying the case where he's talking about it's partially submerged and then you have to be machmir. Do you understand my question?
Yeah, if it's fully submerged, according to Rashi, you don't have to stir it. But then it didn't really fall on the piece if it's fully submerged. I mean, maybe just it fell on the rock.
It did, but it's just connected to all these other pieces via
right.
Sauce.
Yes. According to Rashi, if it fell on a piece that's fully submerged,
so that does feel different.
Then you don't need to stir it, but you do need to stir it if it fell on a piece that's partially submerged.
Correct, but that if I'm understanding, then that does feel different from how the Tur is setting up the Rambam, who's saying you need to stir it no matter what. So it seems like the
Rambam doesn't say what he's talking about. He doesn't say whether it's fully submerged or not submerged. He just says piece. He just quotes the Gemara. He leaves it to you to decide, which is the Rambam often does. He loves
unless you just understand Marak as a synonym for Rotev, and then it sounds like.
Oh, you're talking about the second case. In the first case, there's two cases in the Rambam. One is it fell on the pieces, and in both cases, I think he said stir. Joel.
Right, exactly.
Oh,
so meaning, if I understand it correctly, the Tur is disagreeing with the Rambam, who's saying you always need stirring, whereas Rashi and Tosfot say you don't always need stirring.
Well, let's go back to the words of the Tur. Eini mevin devarav. She'im hatichot kulan b'toch harotav. Matzarich linaer. It's already mixed together. So he's learning kind of like Tosos here.
And like Rashi, because even Rashi was Moda in a case where it's fully submerged, you don't need to
Fully
stir.
submerged. What does he mean? Right. What does the Rambam
Okay, but
mean?
that still
Shem
disagrees with the
Berotav?
Rambam. That still disagrees with the Rambam who says, no, you do have to stir.
He must mean, when he says Einan Berotev, he must mean half submerged. That's the potency of the rest of the Torah's case. We're
That's
really
what I think.
comparing Shitot on half submerged items. We compare the Tosfos on half submerged and the Rashi on half submerged. And the Rambam's not
The
saying either
Rambam
way.
doesn't say the pieces are in the rotev. The Rambam just says
He says,
Nafal
B'toch
halav
ha'marak.
b'toch marak. Marak means not on pieces, on marak. There's one piece at the bottom of the pot, and
I
the
think
rest of it's
Marak and
marak.
Rotev mean I think the Marak and Rotev mean the same thing.
They do, for sure. But there's only one piece. There's 2 liters of rotev, and there's one little tiny piece at the bottom. It fell on the marak. Oh, l'kol chatichot, or it fell not on the marak, but on the chatichot, which are what? Which are partially in the marak. Tosas's case is an ukimta. You have to understand that. Tosas's case is not the natural way to understand a circumstance. A natural way to understand it is that the pieces are all partially submerged. That's when you cook meat, there's juices everywhere, and they're all, in general, they're all partially submerged. And the Rambam is presumably talking like Rashi, that the pieces are all, there's no such thing as Tosas's case. So when the Rambam says nafal chalav b'toch marak, he means not on the pieces, but on the marak. And then it says the kol hachatichot, it fell on pieces, but not one, but on many of them, and I just don't know which. But those pieces are in the marak. Then he says you should stir it, and then on that he says, "Eini mevin devarav she'im hachatichot kulan b'toch harotev," which is the way I would understand it. Matzarich l'naer. You don't need to naer because it should mix together because he's holding like Tosfos. But he doesn't understand the Rambam is holding like Rashi. Ve'im einam berotev, like Tosfos says, that it won't help. In other words, what I'm saying is that the Tur is thinking in the light of Tosfos, and the Rambam is talking in the world of Rashi. The Rambam agrees with Rashi, and therefore the Tur doesn't understand. That's why the Tur doesn't understand the Rambam. That's the way I'm thinking. Joel?
I do want to make a little duke on the words acharkach there. It does sound like it's not a miyad case in the Rambam. That this goes back to the miyad and mitchilat difference. That I think there's some feeling that it's you saw it happen, as opposed to, as people were saying before. I think that the way that the Tosfot and maybe Rashi are understanding the Gemara is you were stirring. Like, you cook, you're stirring, some milk falls in, and you happen to be stirring while you're doing it. Well, that's fine.
Let me just emphasize your point. The Tur is reacting to the Rambam writing no air. And when he says no air, it's for sure acharkach. No air means now we're telling you weren't doing it, go and do it, go and stir. So that means it was acharkach. And on that, and you're saying that's the problem. All right, anyway.
That was what I started with, by the way, which was saying that you were stirring it and the milk fell. I mean, that's what Rev Joel was just describing.
I don't think I still don't agree with that. I still don't think that anybody thinks that's the case. That's an unlikely case, and that's not the normal case the Gemara is talking about. The Gemara is talking about a case where you saw it fall, and then you stirred it. You fell, and then you stirred it. It doesn't mean that it's like the recipe said. While stirring the broth, drop in an egg one by one, and keep stirring. It's not a recipe that you were doing. Normal people don't constantly stir the pot, and so it probably fell, and then you stir. I think that's the way to simply understand. Ori.
Just to strengthen that same reading, the Ad Sofo, I know it's in the Gemara, but Ad Sof, it also strengthens the lack of miyad here, right? Because it's almost like he is outlining a time period. He's like, don't do it basof, but it's like mitchila ad sofo. There's some sof period that's like really it's done. So I'm just the cooking has happened or the flavor transfer has happened. So The Rambam, and that goes along with what you were just saying about no era takdera. Clearly, the Rambam has a little bit more patience for this time period where the stirring is still effective.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it where I can get it. Yeah, I'll agree with you. Joel,
I just want to say the Bach, I think, reads it this way, right? If you see the Bach and Vav,
when
right?
you
It's
say
much,
this way, is it agree with me or not agree with me?
let's can I read it for a second, just the very beginning of it, because I think he
Where? Which Bach? Wait, tell us,
this is
enlighten us.
this is it's a at least mine says Vav. Umashikatav Rabbeinu al divrei Rambam ve'ini mevin dvarav v'chulei.
Wait a
And he
second, I
says,
gotta find it. Vav, yeah. Oh my, yeah. Go ahead.
okay. נראה שרבנו הכריח דהרמב"ם מיירי שאינה חתיכות ברוטב, ועתה לשמועינן דאף על פי שאינו מנער מיד, מועיל הניעור.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, like Tosfos. In other words, he
Yeah.
understands it like Tosfos. But that's not the way. But I'm trying to prove the Rambam is talking like Rashi. The Rambam
I
is in the
know.
world.
Yeah, I know you're trying to prove. Yeah, but I'm just saying the Bach is reading it that.
No, but that's exactly his point. Nirish Rabbeinu. In
Oh,
other words,
yes. Yes,
the
he thinks that
Tur
the Tur is reading the
Hechriach.
Rambam. Yeah.
I would add like this. I'll translate like this. And it seems to me that the Tur decided parentheses for unknown reasons, unclose parentheses, that the Rambam is talking about where the pieces are outside of the water. And he comes to tell us, the Rambam, that even though you didn't stir it immediately, it still helps that you stir it. Dim loke elenoer miyad ka'amar, because if the Rambam really meant that you stir it immediately, kasha, my atilashmina, then it's obvious. Obviously, if you stirred it totally miyad, then it mixes together. My dekamar, what is he trying to? What's the chiddush? There's no chiddush. All right. Anyway, I don't want to get into this whole Bach, but I think that I'm not sure that the Bach is saying that is the right reading of the Rambam.
Oh no! I think the Bach is saying that's how the Torah is reading the Rambam, which is exactly
and that's why I agree. I agree with the Bach. That is how he's reading. All right, we got to take a break here. We'll come back in 5 minutes. We'll continue. All right, let's continue. Um, Now, basically, the same question that we're just talking about is dealt with in the Beit Yosef. He brings, as I mentioned before, Rabbi Yaakov ben Chaviv, or he called Mahari ibn Nun Chaviv. If you look at the Beit Yosef that begins Katav Rambam Aval Im Nier Mitchila Vad Sof. I just sort of skip a little bit. Um, Yeah, actually, maybe we could read it all. We could read it all from the beginning. Maybe everyone found that one where I'm talking about Katav Rambam. So we'll start from the beginning. I'll read. Nearly Shetamo Shel Rambam Midamrinan Begamara Michlal de Rabbi Yehuda Savar Kinier Mitchila Va'ad Sof V'Kisa Mitchila Va'ad Sof Asur Amai Halo Bala Klal. Why would it be usher if you stir it the whole time? Lo balaklal, itmar. Actually, I want to skip this. Start from umahari. Just to skip the next sentence. One sentence, skip ahead. Umahari nun chaviv. You see where it says that? Just like one to the end of the paragraph, end of the sentence, and it says velo basof. It says betchila lo velo besof lo. And then it says Mahari nun chaviv katav. Everyone have that? Give me a thumbs up if you have that. Okay. So it says like this. Katav v'zel lishono. Here's what he wrote. This is all quotationary, a long quotation. Kasher namod al kavanat Rambam. Ein makom lekushiat Rabbeinu Yaakov. Rabbeinu Yaakov is who?
Yaakov ben Asher?
Yeah, the Tur. So his kasha is not a kasha. Keneged devarav, against the words of the Rambam. V'kasher nabit el hatchalat l'shono. If we look at the beginning of the Rambam, kavanato mivueret v'zeh l'shono. This is the Rambam. So he's quoting the Rambam now. Nafal chalav l'toch kedera shel basar to'amin et ha'chaticha shenafal aleha chalav v'chule ad harei ze noten ta'am וכל מעיין בלשון זה ישפוט בצדק שאם מיד בעת הנפילה ניער או כיסה קדרה שמצטרף בכולו. If you would, everybody, obviously, if you stirred it right away, it would מצטרף בכולו. והרי היא בנותן טעם. And then it would be in noten tam, if it would give flavor, or 1 in 60. רצון לומר, אם הטיפה הזאת נותנת טעם בכל הקדרה, אוסרת, then it will be forbid if it gave in the whole pot. ואם אין בה כדי ליתן טעם בכולה, מותרת. And if it doesn't give to the whole pot, it's muteret. אף על פי שיש בה כדי ליתן טעם בחתיכה לבדה, even though it would have forbid that one piece. שכיוון שניער מיד בעת נפילה באותו שש נעשה כל מה שבקדרה דבר אחד. Since you stir it in the beginning, it's like it fell into one thing. מחובר, joined up. ומה שהזכיר הרמב"ם ניער מתחילה עד סוף, היה מוכרח להמשיך הלשון. He just had to say it like that. Why? שאמר בתחילה דבריו, because in the beginning he said, made devarim amurim, b'sheloni er betchila ela b'sof. When is there a problem? When you only stirred it, not at the beginning, but only at the end. Ki bezot chaluka min hechrach lazkir linor lebesof, and that's why he had to mention the sof part. Kefi sugiyat Gemara, because the Gemara said it like that. Ukefi perush mefarshim asher Rambam halach lidarkam. And according to all the Mefarshim that the Rambam was adherent to, the Rambam is not working as an isolated thinker. Vehu zet tipat chalav shenafla al chaticha shebekdera velo nier velo kisa miyad be'et hanefila harei zot chaticha kedavar nifrad bifnei atzmo. If you didn't stir right away, then the piece that it fell on is obviously aser. Uba levada misharinan. And we only measure against it itself. In other words, we have to measure against that piece, the drop against that piece that it fell on. And then it becomes a nevela. And then now it's going to forbid the whole pot because you need to have 60 against it, and unlikely you will have that. Assuming there's no 60 there. Dak b'tanai, but this is only true, and here's the key point. But yet it's dak b'tanai sha'achar shekvar nesra zot haticha. After this piece got forbidden, then you went ahead and nier o kisa in the end. Kedei lechaber et kol kedera liyot echad. And now you're causing yourself trouble. Shim lo nier, but if you hadn't done that, Lama yeser kol chadera. Why would the whole pot become usher? In other words, it falls on a piece. The piece becomes usher. But if you do nothing, you don't stir anything, then why should it forbid the other pieces? Even though it's in the broth with them. Hello, kamo shechashvunha lezot haticha kedavar nifrad asra. Just like we considered it isolated when we forbid it, and the other hatichot didn't come to the rescue, didn't add to the 60. Levatel et hatipa, just like we did that to make it forbidden. Ken raui lechashev kedavar nifrad mishar hatichot. So too now we should think it's separate and not forbid the other pieces. In other words, you can't have it. You can't be machmir in both directions. If you're going to say the piece is separate, and that's why it became forbidden, then it's separate and don't start joining it to the other pieces. And it doesn't have the ability to forbid the others. Unless what? Unless you did go ahead and stir it. And that's why the stirring can be a problem if you do it at the end. This is not important. Oh, netila b'chaticha nogat ba. Oh, in other words, maybe it forbids a klipa of some piece that touches it, but that's a side point. Masha'in king im niera kadera, but this wouldn't be true if you stirred it. O kisa achar shenesra aticha. If you stirred it or covered it after it became forbidden, then you've entered a world of pain. Ki az bevadai zeh hanier o kisa. Now you've caused everything to join together. Now you need 60 against that whole piece. Oh, that's why the Rambam had to write that. He only stood at the end. Val yesod zeh siyem l'shono v'kisheba l'chadesh chalukat heter utzrach lo l'haniach ni'er b'tchila v'zeh amar aval im ni'er b'tchila v'ad sof. And that's why he uses lashon tchila ad sof, because he'd already talked about the problem being when he did it at the end. And so now he says, but it'll join up everything in the beginning if you and not create a problem if you do it b'techila v'adsof, if you do it at the beginning and the end. But the end part was not b'kavanato mivueret she'eno chayav niyur b'techila ubasof. Don't think mistakenly that you need the stirring at the beginning and the end. Elanier b'techila bilvad. You just need to stir it at the beginning. V'im heskir v'ad sof. That was just because of the first case. Because there he had to say you stirred at the end, because otherwise you wouldn't have had a problem at all. Just like I explained. And that explains the Rambam. amitit, the correct answer. Ubesmag, this is the Mahari ibn Chaviv quoting now the Smag. Ubesmag timsasiu liderai. He agrees with what I'm saying. Okay, so that was just explaining really just the first problem that we had. Why does he say ad sof? But he also explained it's a very interesting point, which is that the piece that's submerged in the water, it's an isolated being, even if as long as you don't stir it. וגם אשיב בעדו בדבריו המובנים ביושר ובתמים. And I'll also explain the Rambam makes a lot of sense. במה שאמר רבנו יעקב. Wait a second. Again. וגם אשיב בעדו שדבריו מובנים ביושר ובתמים במה שאמר רבנו יעקב כנגדו. And I'll tell you that the Rambam is right, and even though the Tur argued on him. Ve'eni mevin devarav, and the Tur wrote, I don't understand the Rambam. V'hu pashut, and it's very simple. Gam ken kishenayin hemshech l'shono, v'hu ze samuch l'ma shekatav harei ze benoten tam amar v'ken, and now this is the Rambam. V'ken im nafal chalav l'toch hamarak, if it fell into the sauce, or l'kol hachatichot, or in all of the other pieces, no air. You should stir it. Telling you, go ahead and stir it. Ve'en kavanato b'zeh lomar she'im yesh shahot k'tzat achar hanefila sheyinaer achar kach. Don't think he means that you can go and do it 5 minutes later if there's shahot, whatever shahot means, some time. Ki zeh lo yoyil. That's too late, b'vadai. Aval kavanato shemiyad kishira'a nefila. Now, when you saw the drop fell in, you run over. Nafala tipa l'kedera v'lo heshkiach al eze chaticha, but you don't know which one it fell on. The eze chaticha nafla yemaher l'ne'er. You should do it quickly. O lechasot miyad, or you should do it, cover it. Ubezet titztaref kol ma shebegedera, and then everything can join in. Kevan shelo yada makom hatipa. Oy v'zeh hechrach kefi dikduk lashon v'ken im nafal hachalav. I'm not exactly sure what he means here, but he thinks that the language of the Rambam, when it says v'ken im nafal hachalav, he means it must be that it was quickly that you did this, or that you saw it and then you went quickly to do it. Yoreh, that it teaches, the Rambam is saying, shehi chaluka shaveh bekiruv l'masha kvar eskir. It's similar to the previous case that he already mentioned. Aval im niyer betchila, when he said im niyer betchila. So he's saying that the no'er, what he's basically saying like this, that the no'er that he says, when he gives you a tzivui, a command, go and stir it, it's similar to the previous case where he said he stirred it immediately. So the no'er is also immediate. Don't think that the no'er is later. It's just like the first case.
Because of the word v'chein, right? Because the Rambam says v'chein im nafal.
V'chein im nafal. That's the diktuk. I mean, okay.
Similarly.
Okay, yafeh. Thank you. Thank you, Ori. I think you're right. That makes sense. Thank you for explaining that. But in any case, he's saying the two cases are the same, and just like in the first case, you have to do it bitchila or miyad in some way. So to here, ubezen nashiv kushiyat acheret sheyikshe lechora neged lashon harambam b'ma shekatav no'er et kedera v'halo ein mevatlin iser lechatchila v'ma shekatavti nistalek kushiyat zo ad kan lashon. And by my answer, I have answered that question too, which is all of our question. What's the answer? What is his answer? Why is it not mevatel iser lechatchila? Yeah, Ari.
I mean, this isn't exactly what he said, but maybe because there's some sort of suffix here. So it's not as if there was some time and it fell on the piece. It's like somewhere in there. I don't know if it
Okay.
fell in a piece or in the Marak. It might have
Yeah,
fallen in the
keep going
Marak,
with
by the
that,
way.
Joel. Keep going, Joel.
There's no Isser yet. Everything's mutar
Exactly.
when you
You
stir.
did it miyad. The Isser didn't happen yet. You did it so quickly. Like, there is some time that it takes for the Isser to occur. I mean, if you think about it, if a drop of milk falls into milk, if a drop of meat juice falls into milk, why can we join up all the milk? Maybe we'll say that the drop fell on the milk and it forbid 3 inches of it, and that's it. And then now you have to move out to those 3 inches because you have chanan. So we see, because we know that for a fact that when the drop falls, it doesn't instantly join everything. It takes some time. So if anyway it's taking some time, just continue that process. The milk fell, it started spreading, it was about to continue, but now you stir it and it will continue. And it won't stop at the edge of the piece. Because, in other words, my point is that nothing is instant anyway. When we were talking, even if it would be liquid into liquid, it wouldn't be instant.
I
So
mean,
therefore, you have a few minutes, a
I
few
agree with
seconds.
you. And what I'm saying is, yeah, I mean, it's kitchen work, and it's not physics or chemistry, or for that matter, strange lumpness. You know, that's how people act in the kitchen. Miyad is when the movement of the hand can take place.
Right,
That's what miyad. Or I'd say lechatchila, or the hatchala also. Okay.
right. Or also the chatchala. Exactly. We have to say it's also the chatchala. So yeah. So but we see here that this Harav Yaakov ben Shlomo ibn Chaviv is clearly saying the Rambam is doing it miyad. Is saying you should do it miyad, even though the word miyad doesn't appear, but that's what he means by techila. And he's also clearly saying that the stirring uh, helps it to join the other pieces. Like if you didn't stir, then the pieces would remain isolated. Even though it fell on a piece or two pieces, those pieces would remain isolated until you stirred. And the stirring can cause it to join, even though they're in the water together. And that differs very much from Tosfos. Tosfos would say, no, if it's in the water, it's going to join. So you see that clearly the Rambam is in the camp of Rashi, according to him, at least. Let's read one more. Katav Oda Rambam, a little more in the tour. Katav Oda Ram, Nafal Chalav B'toch HaMarak, O L'kol HaChatichot, Ve'ini Mevin Devarav She'im HaChatichot, Kulan B'toch HaRotev, Mat Tzorech L'Na'er. Oh, that's like Tosfos would say. But now we've just explained that no, you do need to na'er, because even though it's in the water, it stays locally. But that was the question, actually. It's a little bit weird why this is brought now. We've already sort of answered it. But let's just read what he writes here. Well, the fi divrei Rabbeinu, which is the tour, dadifa mina havale litmuye. He had a better question to ask, and this is I think what Joel mentioned. He had a better question to ask, Aleha. כשנפל בתוך המרח עצמו, מה צורך לנער? Why do you need to stir it? אלא משום דבנפל לחתיכות, מה צורך לנער? אלא משום דבנפל לחתיכות. Ika latmuhe aleha. We could question about that if it fell on the pieces. Betray gavne nakta. He took two different directions. Now there's two. He made a maman of shach. He asked both ways. Umemela mashma the ki hechi the mitame beim hachatichot betoch harotev ma sarich linaer. And he's asking in two ways. If it was in the water, why do you need to stir? And so too you could ask, benafal letocha marach, you could ask also by the falling to the water. V'tama de harambam, and the explanation of the Rambam Nira Li. I think this is the Beit Yosef now talking. Sha'af al pi shenafal b'toch hamarak. That even though it fell into the marak, so what? In other words, basically saying this: you have a bigger question. If it fell into the marak, why do you have to stir it? It fell in the marak. I can maybe understand that we just now explained. Ibn Habib just explained that if it fell into a piece, you need to stir it because it'll say locally in the piece if you don't stir it. But why in the marak? So it's kind of like so. So what's his answer? Tzarich l'naro. Why? Kadesh yit arev yafe, so that it should properly mix. V'kol sheken kishenafal latichot b'toch hamarak, and certainly if it fell in the pieces that are in the marak, shehu tzarich l'naer, then you need to stir it also there. Daha chazinan da afilu b'nier mitchila v'ad sof chayish Rabbi Yehuda shema lo irev yafe yafe. The Gemara has this question. Maybe you didn't stir it well enough. V'afal gav de Rabbanan pligi alein. Even though the rabbis don't agree with him, mikol makom modu ditzarich la'asot b'inyan shitarev yafe yafe. So you need to stir it just because it needs to get everywhere. Because it's one thing, like I was saying before, the drop doesn't instantly go everywhere, and maybe it never goes everywhere. So you have to stir it. So that's why you have to stir it, and therefore, mamo'il when he says, why do you need to stir it? Not mamo'il, but why do you need to stir it? The Tur says, I'll tell you very well why you need to stir it, because it needs to go everywhere. And I'll tell you even more a reason that he doesn't say here, but because let's say you're going by timat goy, and if the goy tastes it, he might taste a section where there's a higher concentration or a lower concentration. You better stir it properly so that your probe that you when you initiate a probe, you get a proper sampling. Or Ori.
One thing is I wanted to, you sort of mentioned it briefly on the Sif Aleph. When we first read that, in my lack of knowledge, I was like, how does shishim even help here? Because a little bit of meat comes in. What we're not talking about bitul b'shishin. It's a little bit of a chiddush here that bitul b'shishin works at all, right? Because what we're really talking about is the act of cooking milk and meat together. So the act of milk and meat cooking together is happening even in the kezayit basar shenafal, right? But the real key here is what's then going to spread. So I'm just reviewing, I'm sort of strengthening the point you're making, which is that it actually happens locally, and it doesn't just instantly. The whole thing isn't now an instance of basar v'chalav meeting. It's only happening in the chalav that's touching it closely, and if it's taken out in time, and the whole case there. But it wasn't obvious to me when I read it the first time, because it's like it's an instance of basar v'chalav meeting. Why isn't all the chalav sort of like implicated? Mm-hmm. But you're strengthening it now. So the same thing goes for the marak in the other direction. Like you could have it locally sitting in marak, and it's just sitting there. It's not necessarily really spread that the shishim.
Right. In the end, we don't agree. The rabbis don't agree. They say, no, it does spread everywhere. In other words, it maybe takes, there's 2 points. One is it takes some time to spread, but we do finally say it does spread. And then the stirring can be understood as just for good measure. We want to stir just to really ensure that it spreads. But we don't, it's not like if you don't stir it, we say it didn't spread. It's still going to spread.
And that was my second question, which you're answering now, which is like kisa.
That it spreads.
What?
It's a chashash that it spreads.
It's a chashash that it doesn't spread. Right.
It's a chashash.
So we're going to stir.
We're being careful. I still hold that, just like all politics are local, all basar b'chalav is local.
But kisa.
All right, I hear the musings of your next article.
Yeah. Okay. It'll be
okay. Let's go on to Gimel. I'm going to do another Seif. So, who can I call on? Maybe Noam. You want to read?
Sure. The Tur.
Yeah, Tur Gimel.
Okay. והיכא שנצרה החתיכה מחמת החלב, נעשית כל החתיכה איסור. And in a place where the meat has been forbidden due to the milk, then there's chanan, right? It becomes all forbidden. Ve'im bishela im acherot tzarich shishim levatel kul'a. Af al pi she'i efshar lisachot hachalab habalua ba velibatel b'shishim b'shar hachatichot. Afilu hachi hakol asur. Shekvar nasa hachaticha kula isur. And then if you cook it with others, you need 60 in order to nullify it. Did I say she'efshar? But it says she'efshar. I didn't mean to say she'efshar, right? Even though it's you're able to wring out the milk that's absorbed in it, and to nullify it in the 60 of the other chatichot, even then it's all forbidden because the chaticha was already totally forbidden due to Hanan. Should I keep going?
Right. So what is he saying here? He's saying the din of Hanan, like you said,
Yeah.
which is particularly by Basar Bechalav, and he's also saying kind of Efshar L'soch to Asr. In other words, even though it forbids another place, the piece never is going to be even if it goes into 60 or 65, it wouldn't become mutter. Right? Even if you actually do get all the milk out, because you put it in, let's say, boiling water and it pulls out all the milk, and there was 60 in the water. What does he mean, akol asur? The piece is asur. Shekvar naseh aticha kula is sur, v'tzarich shishim mevatel kula. In other words, there was 60 against what came out. In other words, an ounce of milk went in, and now you got the ounce of milk to come out. You don't need 60 against that ounce. You need 60 against the whole piece because the whole piece became Hanan. ואם יש בכל מה שבקדרה בין מרק ובשר ותבלינים 60 לבטל מה שבקדרה מותר. Now, if it's 60 against the whole piece, levatla, to mevatel that piece, מה שבקדרה mutar, והיא נשארת באיסורה. Sorry, did you read that?
No, I didn't read that, but
okay,
that was good.
He nisheret be'isura. That's where I was saying the Efshar Sochto is Asur. In other words, the first part, he was really just explaining the din of Hanan, that you need 60 against the whole piece and not against just the milk that originally went in and came out. If we go on here, Ve'im kira.
Ve'im kira mashlicha, and if you recognize it, you throw it out. Ve'acherot mutarot, and then all the others are permitted.
Even though there was 60, the piece is still Asur, but the other ones are mutter.
Ve'im eino mekira harotev mutar v'kol hachatichot asurot im chatichat isur reuya litkabed v'davar ze yitber od lekaman b'hilchot haravot. Okay, so but if you don't recognize it, then the sauce or soup is permitted, and all the pieces of meat are forbidden.
Why is that? Why is the sauce permitted if the pieces are forbidden?
Is it like min v'min no v'davar acher almost? Like, I don't know.
Well, I think we already established Mitzias said there is shishim, but it becomes a different thing. Is it like Devar B'Minyan or something, or like the Ru'ilat Kabed that we see coming up that we can say the sauce is fine, but we can't be confident about the pieces.
I have a question. I'll say it a different way. Let me ask a question a different way. What if the pieces were small? What if they weren't Ru'ilat Kabed? Then what would the din be in the pieces?
Presumably, it would be b'shishim if you had 60 little pieces of meat with one of which with a drop on it. Presumably.
No. Anybody else? Anybody who hasn't
barov.
learned it this 4 times.
Min b'mino. It's barov, right?
It's barov.
Barov. Min b'mino.
If they be small pieces, it'd be barov. In other words, the point I want to make here is similar to what Jacob was saying. The point it's basically what Jacob was saying. I want to make the point is that we analyze this single mixture in 2 different levels. We analyze it on the level of liquid in liquid, or liquid with a solid, and another level is the pieces versus pieces. And even though and each of those analyses has different rules, and they apply even though the things are all mixed together. So even though it's all mixed together, when we look at the pieces, we say, do I have rove kosher pieces? If so, then the pieces will be mutter. When we look at the mixture, we say, do I have 60 against the tam? When you look at the liquid, let's say. So the liquid here is mutter because I have 60. The pieces, he says, are aser because we don't go by rove because it's a davar rui litchabed. And then it's even in a million, it's going to be aser if it's proper nice pieces. But if it's small pieces that are not rui litchabed, then we would go by rove, and actually both would be mutter. He chose to go in a certain direction, the Tur. He says it's aser. He just sort of assumed that the pieces are big. They're rui litchabed. Because the chatichot, maybe chatichot sounds like nice pieces. But it's a big question. We discussed rui litchabed before. We learned it. We actually did learn tarovo. What's rui litchabed? What would you say? What's just to remind ourselves? What is the size? Or I'll put it this way: if it's goulash, let's say I'm making goulash. I'm making small, I'm making goulash, like normal sized goulash pieces of meat, and a piece of milk falls on one of them. Would you say that? And I don't know which one. I can't throw it out. Would you say that I just need 2 others to match the pieces?
Yeah.
Joel's saying yes. I agree. I think that goulash pieces are not really bad. You wouldn't offer somebody to come over to your house and say, invite them for dinner. It's like Seinfeld. Soup is not dinner. If you invite somebody over to your house and you offer him 1 piece of goulash meat on a plate, you insult him. It's not really chabad. It's not mechubad. You give him 1 steak, then it is mechubad. But 1 piece of goulash meat is not. So if now I can ask the question the opposite. What if there isn't 60? Could the pieces still be mutter? If there's 1 against 2? Joel's saying yes. I disagree.
There's still flavor transfer,
there's still flavor transfer. The pieces will become usher. In other words, the pieces, I think. But Joel, you want to defend yourself, or you change your mind?
No, I'm trying to think. I think it depends on. This is a basar b'chalav situation, so then we'd have a Hanan issue also going on there. But if you're not Ashkenazi and you say there's no Hanan b'shar yisurim, I can make a case. But I think for sure because I guess the Tom back. So,
but even if it would be chazir, the flavor of the chazir is going everywhere, so the pieces are all usher. The only reason we have a question, the only reason that we have the right to view it in 2 different levels is because the sauce is mutter.
Yeah.
If the sauce would be usher, then it's all usher.
No, I think you're right because in the tom of the sauce, the tom is always 60, right? It's the tom is exactly. Not. Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
All right, so let's look. There's one little place here in the Tur in the Beit Yosef. Do I want to look at this Beit Yosef? Yeah, I don't know if we have time for that. Yeah, let's look at the bear. Somebody want to read the Beit Yosef here? Joel, you can read, Joel.
Great. This is where do you want me to start?
Yeah, from the beginning of Gimel. Yeah.
Okay.
Perek Kol HaBasar.
Perek Kol HaBasar, Itmar, Rav Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Yochanan, the Amre, Afshar Sochto Asur. All right, so that's the side of Afshar Sochto Asur, which is somewhat related to Chanan, but not fully. Shmuel Rabbi Shimon bar Rabbi Verish Lakish, the Amre Afshar Sochto Mutar. All right, so then we've got people on both sides in Afshar Sochto. ופירש רש"י, אפשר לסוכתו איסור שנבלע בהתר, ונתן בו טעם, ואסרו, וחזר ובישל ההתר הזה עם ההתר אחר, שאפשר האיסור הנבלע בזה לסחט ממנו ולחלק בהתר האחרון, ואין בו כשיעור לאסור את האחרון. Right, so it's just to put that in simple words. If the softo mutar would be essentially the piece, the isur that's in the piece now gets redistributed among all the other things that are in that it's cooked with, and therefore it becomes now you have 60 against it. So.
Right. The isur into the piece is not transformative. That's a good word. It's not transformative of the piece. The piece remains in its essential state. It's just that it has in it isur. So the piece is not transformed into isur. That's Esher Sochto Mutter. But Esher Sochto Asur would mean even if it is transformed. By the way, just bear in mind that if I can't prove it right now, but from my previous learning, the Tur holds that the Tur at least holds there's no difference between Esher Sochto and Chana.
I think I wrote that down in my notes somewhere in my tour. So I got that from something.
We proved that in a previous year. Okay. Now go on.
All right. Ufasak harosh kiman demar shasokto asur v'chein pasach harashba b'torat habayit. Okay. V'chein pasak harambam b'perek tet machalot asurot ve'alfa pishu katav haravad shelo amru chatichat zman asin nevila elo l'Rabbi Yehuda demachmir b'mimino. Right? Even though the Ravad, actually that was the piece that
wait a second, I have a question. Wait, before you go on.
Yeah.
When it says the Rosh and the Rosh Paskin that it's Asur, and the Rashba Paskin that's Asur, what is he talking about? Is he talking about Shar Yisurim or Basa B'chalav?
He's talking about just Shar Yisurim, Shar Softos. No, he's talking about Shah. He doesn't say what in particular here. He's not saying.
That's why I'm asking a hard question.
Yeah, well, the Rambam, we know the Rambam doesn't hold that for Shari Surim. So.
Who?
The Rambam doesn't hold that for Shari Surim. We know that.
I'm talking about Rambam. I'm talking about the Rosh and the.
But the Rosh also doesn't hold it for Shari Surim. The Torah says that outright.
Our Siman. Wait a second. Our discussion here is about Basar B'chal.
Yeah.
But what does the Gemara in Chulin talk about? Itmar. What is the Itmar?
It's about Shari Yisurim.
Right.
I know that's not. Is it? No, it's our sugya. There was also about Basar B'chalav, actually.
Well,
I believe so. Right? I think so. It's Kufcha. It's right where we started there. It's in the Tipat Chalav section there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's also that
milk and meat.
Yeah, and
so they're saying that in milk and meat, the Rashba and the Rosh are saying in milk and meat there is a din of Chanan.
Exactly.
So here we're seeing the essential din of Chanan, not the questionable din of Shari Suri. We're seeing the essential din of Chanan in milk and meat, and we're seeing that the Rosh is holding yes, there is Chanan, and the Rashba is saying yes, there is Chanan. And now what does the Ravid say?
The Ravid says no, that's only according to Rabbi Yehuda. Because Rabbi Yehuda is machmir b'min b'mino, because he says it's not asur le'olam. It's not there's no bitul in min b'mino. But for us, l'dina nekaimel min b'mino batel lo. But that doesn't apply for us who hold that there is bitul min b'mino according to the Rambam.
What would he hold about milk and meat? The Ravid?
The Ravid would hold that there's no Hanan in milk and meat.
There's no Hanan. Amazing opinion here. This is an amazing opinion. The Ravid holds there's no Hanan. In other words, the milk comes out of the meat into your pot, and now you just have to mavata the milk. In other words, if you have a piece of meat that absorbs some milk, and then you cook it in another pot with meat, you only have to mavata the initial chalav. The chalav is just, and what is that din like? Is that din is like shatnez. Why is it like shatnez?
You pull up the shatnez and you're done. It's,
if you have one thread of shatnez has no din of batal bashishi, but if you have one thread of pishtan in your wool and you pull it out, it's mutter again. It's only usher when it's together.
Yes, the checkers will do that for you sometimes. If you go get something checked for shatnez, if they find it, they'll say, "Well, we could if we could pull it out, we'll take it out."
Exactly. Right? So the Ravid says no difference here. Take out the milk, mutter again.
Is this a Metzius thing? Do you have to pull out the milk, or it's just that potentially Efshar Sochta?
No, I think the Ravid also would say that if you cook it, that's a way of pulling out the milk. By recooking it that's how Hagala works. When we do Hagala on a fork, we pull out the flavor that's in the fork. So we can do Hagala on Ochel, says the Ravid. We can pull out the milk. I mean, that's what Efshar Sochta means. You drop it in a pot of boiling water, and all the milk comes out now. And when the milk comes out, now the piece, well, irrespective, the piece may remain usher because we're never really sure by meat if it comes out fully. By a fork, we're sure it comes out. But by meat, maybe we're not sure that it fully comes out, that the Rashba talks about this. So maybe the meat will stay usher. But the point is, I don't need to mevatel it against, I mean, it's only chashash that the meat is usher. Theoretically, the meat is really mutter because I pulled it out. And therefore, I only bittel against the original milk. So you're kind of right. It's only theoretical. No, it's only a chashash that we didn't pull it out. But really, yes, we pulled it out. Anyway, the Ravid holds, I mean, I don't know what the connection is to Rabbi Yehuda. Why does it connect to Rabbi Yehuda? That's also a question. Why is it? You have to learn the whole sugya there. But the Ravid holds that it's only according to Rabbi Yehuda. And if you notice, all the sugyas that talk about Efshar Sochto, they're always talking with Rabbi Yehuda involved.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some, and as the Ravid himself states, there was Ruach HaKodesh in his Beit Midrash. So, he knows what he's talking about. At least he thinks he knows what he's talking about. Okay. V'katav Haran.
V'katav Haran. Sheyesh shomrim zeu dat harif. That the Ravid, also the Rif holds the same as the Ravid. Why shelo katav lechatichat smanas nevela latzucha shiur seba lidivrei chachamim shomrim mim b'mino batel. Right?
Because he never said in the context of the Rabbanan the din of Hanan. But, that you would need 60 against the whole thing. Okay, go on.
But Hare Katav, I think this is back to the Ran now. The Ran writes, She'ein ze mechuvar. This isn't clear. V'Yerushalmi de Orla have tiyufte. Right, and the Yerushalmi and Orla is a tiyufta, is a refutation of this idea. So Ve'af Haramban.
We don't know what that Gemara is, but yeah, okay. Yeah. That's like you always want. If you ever in an argument with somebody and he says, but the Gemara says like this, and you want to win the argument, he says, yes, but the Yerushalmi says different, and then you won.
Yeah, good luck finding it. But all right, Ve'af Haramban.
Actually, this will be pretty easy to find. This will be pretty easy to find because it's Perikolabasar, I suppose.
It's not. It's Orla.
Oh, it's Orla. Orla, sorry.
Yeah, I have a citation.
Perik Beis Mishnah Zayin.
Yeah.
Okay, so go on. V'Ramban.
V'af Haramban katav shalacha ravachati hatichat manas nevela. Right. He says it's like a widespread halacha. Everyone knows this, right? Everyone knows. Sorry, it's not widespread. It's a sure halacha here. Ve'oseret afilu l'divrei chachamim, and even according to against Rabbi Yehuda, even according to the Chachamim, simin b'meino bat has bitul. They also agree that for at least for basar b'chalav there is chanan. V'chein ra'ui ladun u'larot li'inyan maseh. Gam harav hamagid katav shekvar hiskimu rov hamafarshim de'afilu Rabbanan chatichat manas nevela lesor b'shishim kenegda. So, okay, we've got like the Rav Magid, we've got everybody. Rov Mefarsh, who says everybody says this, or not everybody, vast majority of people, and that's what we should teach people, and we should rule. So, hence we end up the Rav becomes essentially, and maybe the Reef become lone opinions, in this debate.
Here, we didn't do Daled. We're not going to do Daled now, but just skip ahead. I want to read one section of Daled just to sort of round out the picture. If you look at the Beit Yosef in Daled, there's a Mordechai. You see where it says Mordechai in dark letters?
Mordechai Katav.
Yeah, but not there. A little bit past that, there's a place where by me there's like a Darkei Moshe bet with three stars.
I only have one with 2 stars. So let's see.
It says Katav Haran. Look where it says Katav Haran. It's like quite a bit past the beginning.
Oh, okay. Hold on. That might be the next page.
It's not like one line.
Oh, yeah, here it is. Yeah, V'chatav Haran
Shinirali. It's like 10 lines. By me, it's like 10 lines after that. But I have wide lines.
Right after
Everyone has it?
Yeah.
Kasaf Haran?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. So we look at Kasaf Haran.
Is it still me? I keep
Yeah,
reading.
it's still you.
Okay. וכתב הר"ן שנראה לי דחתיכת זמן נעשה נבילה בבשר בחלב מדאורייתא, לפי שבשעת התערובת הוא שמתחדש האיסור ונעשה כל אחד עצמו של איסור. All right. So he says this is a deraita thing because why? The Easter happens when the two of them mix. And that's a new thing that becomes the Easter. So the whole piece essentially becomes the Easter. We've talked about this before. Ubishar Isrim eno elemi divrehem. And what about for Shar Isrim? That Hanan is only a rabbinic Easter.
This is
Rabbinic.
extremely important statement, in my opinion, because it's very often that you think it's that when we hold that Hanan B'Shar Yisurim, is there an honor? Is there isn't, like it's an essential argument. In other words, you would normally say, does this concept of Hanan apply in both cases or only in one case? And those who say it's only in Basar B'Chalav, they say that, and just like that's Deraita. The ones who say it's in everywhere, they say it's also Deraita. Because otherwise, once you say that it's only Divrei Ham in Shar Yisurim, then there really is no argument. There's no argument between those who say Hanan B'Shar Yisurim and yes or no. Everybody agrees on a Deraita level that there's only in Basar B'Chalav. So everybody agrees, really. What's the argument? It's just whether there's a Gezerah D'Rabbanan on Shar Yisurim. But they best and in other words, what I'm saying is on the essential argument, on the intellectual level or the Deraita level, everybody agrees. It's just in Basar B'Chalav. And it's to divrei hem, and this is an important point. I mean, I'm not sure everybody agrees with the Ran, but this is the way I think everybody does. I do think everybody does. I'm just not. I can't prove it. But I mean, there are places in the Ramah where I could prove it, where the Ramah holds that he clearly see that he's lenient in Shar Yisurim where he shouldn't be, and he basically is because it's the Rabbanan. And if you don't understand this principle, it's very strange what the Ramah is saying. Why all of a sudden be lenient? So he says, "B'divrei hem." Just read it a little bit more. You
want to make them equal. וכיוון דלא החמירו אלו משום לטל דבשר בחלב, אין אומרים חתיכת הזמן נעשה נבלה, אלא בדברים המתבשלים דומיה דבשר בחלב. Right? The derech bishul asatra. Right?
So wait a second. Wait a second. Well, first of all, before you go too fast, why did they make this gezerah?
It's just you want to make it to attach it to basar b'chalav, make it even with basar b'chalav. So it's like
right,
all these
yeah. In other words, they just wanted to say this is an isser, that's an isser. Milk falling into meat is like an isser is the same in the people's mind conceptually as an isser falling into the rice. So we're going to create one legal system. We don't have multiple laws in different weird cases, so we treat everything the same. It's kind of like in Nida that we treat every dam Nida, we treat it as a zav because we don't want to start making distinctions.
Or the elevation of chicken.
Or the elevation of chicken. Yeah. We want to just make things simple for things that are occurring every day. I would say in areas, you might say in other areas like ketubot or other halachas that only chachamim deal with and very few people have to deal with, then maybe we could keep distinctions. But here we want to make everything simple because this is everything. Everybody knows this has to deal with this all the time. So they make it all equivalent. And now he says,
but
since they only were machmir because of this reason, go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, so, but therefore, it's only for things that are the deraita level basar b'chalav, so only cook things that combine together, only if it's derech bishul. So it's, it would sound like, for instance, a shriya, like kibush, right, kavush, would not be, would not
be Hanan. Interesting. Hanan. Yeah, okay, good example.
But inami sonen latoch cham she'af hu derech bishul, right? Alternatively, if he called into hot, it's even though it's derech bishul.
That's also called derech bishul. Umishum hachi. I think it's a new idea now. Umishum hachi.
Yeah. Meduma umechumatz. right? So if it's mituma, like it's like it's
here's
tevel,
the example that he brings. If you have
yeah.
miduma or mechumatz, in other words, like you have truma and you
Yeah.
have things that are mixed together, but they're grains. The key point here is they're grain, and
Mhm.
they're therefore little specks, little pieces that mix together thoroughly.
Well, it sounds to me like it's kind of like you use for flour, right? If you mix truma flour
Yeah.
with regular flour and it rises, something like that, right? It becomes chametz, she'eno derech
Okay.
bishul. Yeah, lo amrinan bechatichat zman naseh nevela, right? Then we wouldn't say that that's chanan in that case.
Exactly.
But
Okay.
all right.
We'll stop there.
Oh, stop
We'll
there.
stop
Okay.
there. So we saw now that we paskin that there is of course deraita hanan in Basar B'chalav, not like the Ravid, but the Ran points out that in Shar Isurim it's only midivrei hem. That's a key thing to remember for that Ran. Okay, we'll stop here. Next time we'll continue in the same way we're going. We'll continue in the tour with various Beit Yosefs that are relevant.
Thank you.
Yishikoyach. Joel, you're still doing
Yeah,
Chazar?
thank you.
Yeah, but we're not going to do Chazar this week. So next week we'll try to double up on this, which is a big siman.
Okay. Good luck.
Thank you.
Sure.
Right.